Good morning, everybody. Todd Obert, President and CEO of Productive, joined alongside here by the Rock and Roll Manager of the Year, John Sanavasi, Principal Consultant from Arcserve, where today we are going to teach you how to be a data management rock star. And the way we're going to do it is by talking about Arcserve UDP Appliance, the key instruments. As you see the gentleman in the picture, which is actually John and I from our college years, we were rocking out and we wish we would have had this UDP appliance back in the day. But lo and behold, it is here today and we can talk about it. So what we will do today is meet Productive in 1 minute. Then we will go through the key features of UDP, contrast the appliance version versus software only, and then hop right in and John will show us the actual technology. Q&A throughout, utilize that chat feature and we will make sure your questions are answered. So for right now, let's meet Productive in 1 minute. Who is Productive Corporation? Well, I am very glad that you asked that question. We are a security and storage software expert for mid-sized companies. We have a dedicated staff so that you don't have to wait on hold. We can make sure that all your questions are answered. So whether it's implementation or services, you don't have to get out there and search the World Wide Web. We also implement, test, and optimize the products that we sell. Everything from security assessments to penetration tests. We do healthcare assessments, we do config assistance and UTM services. We can take that new appliance and optimize it for you in your environment. We also produce content for the mid-market. Now, everything that you'll find from white papers to videos are on our site as well as our YouTube channel. The bottom line is we have the resources to help you, whether it's implementation, assessment, licensing, or optimization services, help@productivecorp.com. Please call us. Please reach out. We are here to help you. And one of the ways that we do that is by talking about the technology that we sell and technology that's relevant for the mid-market. Today, if you joined us at the top of the broadcast, you know we have John Sanavasi, the principal consultant from Arcserve, here to talk about Arcserve UDP. Fantastic product that we will be showing you in a moment. But first, let's talk about some of the key features in UDP. And, you know, John, you can feel free to chime in here whenever you want, but a lot of stuff that we've seen that we really like about you know, the new UDP is, first of all, the single unified management console, the ability to dedupe globally across the environment, agentless backup of, you know, VM or Hyper-V. And John, is it also does this work with ZenWorks as well?
Well, right now we don't have agentless backup for Zen, but we can back up the Zen, you know, the Zen VMs fairly easily with our agents.
Yeah.
But that is something that is a roadmap item.
Yeah, totally. And then, and it really allows you. The UDP allows you to, you know, you can back up locally, you can back up off-prem, you can back up in the cloud or use a cloud service. And lo and behold, now there is the appliance option. So, John, I'm going to throw it over to you to tell me, can you compare and contrast the UDP appliance versus software?
Sure. So when we came out with UDP, the software, we added the concept of a recovery point server. So a recovery point server is basically your backup device. And we simply just made a device with the software pre-installed to have either the capacities of, right now it's 3, 6, and 9 terabyte models, where we can back up to. And actually, about a week and a half ago, we just released the Arcserve Cloud, which is an extension of the appliance. So people can now back up locally to their local appliances and then replicate it to the Arcserve Cloud. And there is a cloud SKU, which would just match up to the same model number as the model that they own. So if they own a 3 terabyte model, they basically have a 3 terabyte model in the cloud that matches it as a replication location, so you can do that off-site type capabilities. The appliance also is a 1U rack mountable box. It has RAID 5 configuration, so either if you're on the 3 terabyte model, there's 4 1 terabyte drives. The next model up, the 7200, has 4 2 terabyte drives, and the same thing for the 7300 has 4 3 terabyte drives, giving you the in RAID 5 configuration, giving you the ability of having 3, 6, and 9 terabytes. Now with deduplication that's built into the box, we have customers achieving up to 26 terabytes of backup data on the 9 terabyte model. So there is definitely a capacity savings when you're dealing with the appliances, and it built-in deduplication that we have. Let's see, what else can I say about this?
Yeah, no, I think that's, I mean, yeah, no, I think that it gives you a pretty good idea, right? I mean, is there any reason that somebody wouldn't want an appliance and just go software only?
I mean, larger environments, if 3, 6, and 9 are not your, if you're larger than that, you can actually buy the software and build your own, virtual appliance, so to speak. The appliance, like I said, is a Windows server, and that's really, it needs a quad-core processor and 16 gigs of RAM. And obviously you just have as much disk space as you need, and we can size that rather easily on our website. We actually have a sizing estimator, which would make it easy to figure out what you will need on the back end, and it also gives you the drop downs. I can show that real quickly when I go into the demo.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, let's. I'm turning it over to you.
Okay. All right. Can you see the screen, Todd?
Sure. I can see your screen.
All right. So taking you to arcserve.com, there's actually a live trial is right here in the green box, and we also have a try and buy for the appliance as well. We'll send you one, and you can try it out, or you can try the software only, depending on what your needs are. Under support and learning, we'll take you right to our arcserve.zendesk.com, which is our support site, and in there is a UDP storage estimator, and I'll just go through this real quickly so I can show you some of the product. In that estimator, you'll see here 5 terabytes. Obviously, that's a number just made up there. You can choose how many servers that you're backing up and how many recovery points you want to keep. So for instance, if I was just backing up like 3 servers and you have maybe about a terabyte worth of information and 30 recovery points, and the way a recovery point works with Arcserve UDP is we do a one-time full because we're using VSS snapshots to take the initial backup, and then we do block level increments from that point on. So if I was just storing, about a terabyte of data, over the course of 3 years, we're looking at a space savings of we'll only be using about 3/4 of a terabyte on the RPS server. And if I chose one of my appliances, like the 7100, you'd see that it fits there. It would show red X's if it was too large, so it would say you might have to go to the next model up. Now, this is only showing 60% deduplication. Now, we do have customers that are getting a lot larger, like 80, 85%. And just to show you, we'll be using a fraction of a terabyte of disk space on there, so you have plenty of room to grow. The product can back up servers and workstations. And as Todd mentioned, we can do agentless for Hyper-V and VMware virtual servers. But agents are included with the appliance. If you buy the software, based on, you can actually get licensed based on the capacity or the amount of sockets that you have in total. Either way you go, this would be the size of the backup server that you would need. So that's just a little sizing calculator that's right up there on the Arcserve Zendesk that you can always use, and also well as myself or any of the Arcserve team members, we can help size out the customers effectively and get you the right software or the right appliance to fit your needs. Now within the product, it is all web-based. Todd mentioned the management console. I happen to be on one of the appliances, so that's why it shows up here as localhost. But if I wanted to remotely manage it, I would just put the name of the server. Now, this server happens to be called Manager, and port 8015 is the port that we use for just the management console. And then agents will be deployed. They use port 8014, and these are configurable ports, of course. So just to keep that in mind. But the default settings on the software is 8014 or 8015.
John, is there any special config you need to do with the gateway to access this remotely, or how does that? Is it pretty standard, just however you're going to get
Yeah,
in?
pretty standard. I mean, you can always RDP into a server, if you have VPN access, but it's going
Yep.
to be internal to their network. So whatever firewalls that are open, you'll need to obviously get through those. We do use port 25,000 for replication, so that port would also need to be open. So to transmit information from one RPS server to another RPS server, 25,000 is the port we use for replication. But for the agents to do their local backups, so basically it's designed that you have a recovery point server at each site, and each site with all the servers or workstations that are there would back up to its local recovery point server, and then we dedupe that there, and we can globally dedupe it to other sites. There might be other information being backed up to other RPS servers, and we maintain deduplication and kind of just send the hash table first to get that to hash the differences. So only unique information is transmitted. And by the way, there is a jumpstart utility to help seed remote recovery point servers. So just keep that in mind, that we have that ability as well. And if you decide to use the Arcserve Cloud, that's a free service, by the way. We'll ship you a drive so you can basically offload your data store to it and mail it back to us, and we'll put it up in the cloud so there's not a huge amount of data being transmitted in the first shot. And then we just pick up replication where that point left off, just to save on bandwidth.
And then if you utilize Arcserve Cloud, John, can you access the cloud product and just configure that without, and then that'll sync back to your, appliance on site, or?
Well, it's designed to be your off-site protection, where you can also fail over your servers. So there's a feature in the product. I'm glad you brought that up. There's a feature in the product called Virtual Standby, where we can take any system that we're backing up. Those recovery points will then be preloaded to a hypervisor of your choice. And this could be Hyper-V, it could be VMware. It can actually be the appliance as well. The appliance has the ability to hold about 3 virtual servers on there, your critical boxes. And so if anything happens to the primary system that we were protecting, the virtual server can now just start up. So we basically do all the DR processes in the back end and load up a virtual copy of your box. And once that virtual copy is started, obviously it's the same exact server, IP address and all. Now, what if something happened to your main site? We can actually perform the same service up in the cloud, running on the Arcserve Cloud. So you'll have your virtual servers running up there. And then, of course, we'll have to set up some VPN connections or some sort of, obviously, a way for you to access those servers from there. And that'll all be done, within the firewalls and stuff like that, getting your routers set up to have the connections to those particular boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the software, to protect any server, you basically can add your nodes to protect in here. Your destination is going to be your local recovery point server. When you buy the appliance, this part is already built for you. And then we're just going to ask you the question through the wizards of, what nodes do you want to protect? And then we actually create a protection plan for that system. So inside that plan, from start to finish, where am I backing up to my local recovery point server? Then I can add a task to that plan to replicate it to a remote recovery point server or a remote appliance, or to the cloud as an off-site location. And then we can also set up as another task virtual standby. And the virtual standby can be set up locally to a local hypervisor in your local environment, as well as you can set it up to a remote hypervisor, as long as you're doing replication first. So it's kind of like a workflow engine. So where you put those pieces, it works in that flow and maintains the protection for your systems. All right. So when you click on Get Started, you basically have the ability to takes you to the resource list, which is where the meat and potatoes basically happens within the product. I'm just going to close some of these groups down. These groups get created as you add servers to your mix. And by the way, the UDP software is designed to, right now it supports Windows and Linux systems. So that's what we can back up to it right now. All nodes list, and as simple as adding those nodes by clicking this button, or the wizard is over here on the right-hand side. You can click Add Nodes to Protect. Basically takes you to the same button here. You can add them in manually, or you can use the import wizards, which will help you discover from Active Directory and import your servers in there or workstations. You can also import all your virtual systems from vCenter or ESXi, as well as Hyper-V. Those are the three that I use mainly. Or you can do them manually if you'd like, if you want to be
So John,
that way. Yes.
say I get an appliance, how long is it going to take me to get that thing, installed and configured to start running, being my backup solution?
25 minutes is about, because it basically it loads a wizard. It'll basically allow you to give it a server name, give it an IP address. Actually, it has 2 IP ports, so you can have dual NICs on there. You don't have to use both if you don't want to. Once you configure that, it reboots, and then it starts launching the wizard, so you can set the product up. So it'll actually guide you through most of these steps as well. So you can actually set up your protection plan right through the installation wizard of the appliance. So the first time you boot, just make sure you're all ready to go, that you have your IP addresses, your name of the server that you want to call it, and it'll create the data store on the recovery point server. That's be under this link here. You'll have your new server name and your appliance. If you decide to add another appliance to your mix, like say a different location or the cloud, you'll basically add a recovery point server here, or just use this one console to manage both of them. So you can basically just stay with one console, because the console kind of comes with the appliance as well. It'll ask you, do you want to join another, be managed by another console, or do you want this RPS server to be managed, here separately? Or either way you set it up, you have the ability to replicate between them. There's 2 different replication options in the plans. So one plan will let you replicate to another remotely managed RPS, or you can set up a plan that just, that's what this option here, replicate from a remotely managed RPS. But if they're in the same console, you basically would just use in your plans, you set up a replication task to go from one to the other. It's real simple on that. Like I said, about 25 minutes would be, pretty much you'll have a backup running, as long as you can reboot some systems. So when an agent is deployed, it'll ask you to reboot the server. You have a choice between rebooting now, later, at a specific time, or reboot it yourself. So if you install an agent, you'll need to reboot that system in order to start a backup. So as long as you can do that, your backups can be running, within a matter of minutes. Setting up a simple plan, as simple as taking those systems that you registered, adding them to your list. You can do that from the drop-down. You can select the nodes that you want to protect, just basically by moving them to the right-hand side of the screen. Once you do that, you point it to your local recovery point server and give it a password, and then you can set up your schedules. Now you can run a simple backup that runs every few hours, and it'll basically on here, it's defaulted at 31. So for instance, if I did a backup every 3 hours, I would basically calculate how many recovery points I want to keep, and I figure out what I need this bucket to be. If you're just interested in just doing daily backups, just change that custom to a daily and do your backups, once a night at 10 o'clock, or that's just an example here. Choose what days, hit save. You can also save some extra metadata in your retention. Say you're doing daily, and you also do some monthlies as well. Choose your schedule to a monthly schedule, and you can say at the last day of the month, I want to keep 12 copies, so you'll have a year's worth of information in the monthly bucket. You may not be doing as many customs, so you can just drop that number down. You only need a few recovery points to save a year's worth of data. So it'll save that metadata. You check off the catalog so you can do quick restores. And if you're doing exchange, we can do granular restore of an exchange email, as long as you check this box off here, that you have some exchange in there. And under the Advanced tab, you can truncate your SQL and exchange logs on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, and also get your email alerts. There's also the ability to do some pre and post execution, running batch files. Some of the older backup products have had that in the past, so if you're running some sort of homegrown applications that may need to be stopped or started between backups, you can do that within here as well as an automatic feature. Also, the product will give you some threshold information as health on your server, CPU, memory, disk, and network. Now, if I wanted to take this data that's being backed up to my local RPS and I want to send it to my remote, I basically just can set a task up and just tell it to replicate. So the sources is whatever I picked in task 1. The destination is going to be in task 2. And I just point it to another RPS server, whatever name you gave it, and data store. And now with replication, you don't actually have to schedule it. If you do schedule it, obviously it'll be scheduled replication. If you leave it blank, it'll be real time. So as data hits the first recovery point server, it'll automatically be replicated to the second. And you can also change the retentions on how many recovery points you keep. So for instance, if I wanted to keep 2 years, I can make this 24 on your month ends.
So John, well, that'll tell you, right, how much space you're using, or how does that give you a sense of where you're at relative to capacity?
So your space and information is all going to be basically noted on the recovery point server. So you can look on here. It'll show you how much data is in there, what your deduplication rates are, and compression, and overall data reduction. On this first data store, I'm not replicating everything, so it's showing me I'm getting about 77% space savings and a 63% deduplication. Now this server is getting about 90% deduplication. So it really depends on what type of data, of course, and how many servers that you're backing up. If you're backing up a bunch of servers that all have the same OS, you're basically going to have only one copy of the OS for all those systems. So you'll get a greater deduplication rate. And certain files are already compressed, so you might not get the best compression rates. So it really depends on the data, of course. Everyone's mileage may vary for everybody. That's just usually the way that it works. But basically to manage the product, once you have your plans set up and you registered your systems, you basically do everything right from here. You get a heads-up display. You can have a special groups if you want to, group your servers together. Like for instance, the plans that I created, this agent plan has like the 2 servers in it. So I can actually manage it from here and just right-click on the server and say log into the agent. You'll get your statuses as well. When you hover over the little green dot showing that everything's good, it shows you your last backup, informations. If they're green is successful, yellow might be a warning, red, something went wrong. So you get the color codes right off there. If you want to do a restore of something on a particular box, you can just right-click on a server and say restore, and it'll actually open up the agent. And notice the port 8014 up here. So this server was called production. It has an 8014 port, and that's where I'm connecting to, and it opened up the restore screens. And your choices for restores are browsing the recovery points, which you can do from this nice calendar view, and it tells you how many backups took place within those time intervals. And you can basically just point and click which file you want to restore, and then just follow the questions, next, and it restores. You can do the same thing for Exchange Mail. You can drill down to a specific day, look into the mailbox database, and go right down to like an inbox of someone's mailbox and restore a single piece of mail. This option in here will allow you to restore to a different location. There's a few other ways of restoring besides just through the UI, which is kind of cool in the product. So for instance, you have the ability to, and this is one of my favorites, is to mount the recovery point as a drive letter on a specific system. So like this particular production server has a C&E drive. Now I happen to have the remote desktop to that system. What I'll do is I'll just move it over here so we can put them side by side. See, there's the C&E drive in the Windows Explorer on that local box, that production server. If I say I want to mount it as a Z drive on that box, or any drive letter that I choose, you'll need to put the restore password in there as well that we set into the backup job. And that'll basically mount that. And even though it was an incremental backup, it'll present it to the user as a full. So they will see the full volume as it was at that point in time, even though it's not taking up that much disk space on the recovery point server. And it does this rather quickly. So if you remember old backup software when you had to restore incrementals and fulls together to get the information off of that, now with the disk-based utilities that we have, it's so fast. So we can do fast backups and fast restores rather easily. And here you can use the Windows search utility, basically, or just cut and paste or read. You basically have a read-only volume that's totally usable for for an end user. And when they're done, the administrator can just go and click on dismount, and that Z drive will disappear off that server. And there's one other way that you can also restore. Actually, there's two. One of my favorites here, looking at the data store on the recovery point server. Now, mine happens to be on my E drive in the backup folder on this box that I'm on right now. That's why I just opened up the Windows Explorer and I can see it. Any server that I back up will have its server name and has a little SID information next to it as well. If I right-click on it, I can change it to the Arcserve UDP recovery point view. Notice the icon just changed to a little yellow folder instead of a blue. And now I can drill in, and I can drill into those recovery points. And I went to the last one, which is one of the incrementals. And I can still drill in to the Exchange database as well as the C or E drive and actually do a restore right from any one of these levels, going right down to the mail. I'll go to the inbox, and there's some emails in there that you can actually restore or use the recovery wizard to allow it to restore to the original location. Notice it says here, if you want to restore to an alternate server, Exchange server, use the agent web UI, which is where it was before.
That's pretty cool. And yeah, we actually had a file folder on one of our servers just disappeared last week, and we used this to pull it right back. And it was you know, we'd snapshotted it I think every 15 minutes. So
right.
We were yeah.
And the last restore method. And by the way, any agent that's on the tray icon, you can right-click on it and get to those options like mount recovery point, copy recovery point, which is like kind of an offloading facility where we can take it off to another piece of media, so you can actually kind of run with it if you needed to. Like say your building was on fire, you can hit copy recovery point. It'll dump something to like a USB drive, and you can run out the door, and you have a copy of your server with you, ready for bare metal DR. And that bare metal DR is a utility right here to create a boot kit. And you can, it's basically just a bootstrapper, which you can load on a USB stick, or you can create an ISO file. Now, if you load it on a USB stick, you can basically boot from any system you can boot it up, and it'll ask you where those recovery points are. So you can point it to a local recovery point server, and then, well, unless you have it in a remote location, then you can transmit that information somehow over to you, so you have those recovery points locally to do a quick restore to a box, and you have the ability to do bare metal recovery to dissimilar hardware. The product can also be used to take servers that were physical and make them virtual rather easily. I mentioned virtual standby briefly in the product, that there's a capability of it. But we can also use this ISO image, take that file, make it the CD-ROM drive of a blank VM, boot to that from that CD-ROM drive, that virtual drive basically, and it'll ask you where the recovery points are. And then once you do that, it'll just copy the recovery points to that server, and then when it reboots, you have your server up in the virtual world automatically. And it works for workstations as well as servers. You can even go from virtual to physical if you wanted to. Not that anybody would, but most of the time you might have some migrations going from physical to virtual.
Yeah, hey, we got a couple minutes left, John, so let's, if any more high points or things you want to show, let's do it.
Well, I mean, I think I hit all the high points of the software. I mean, the software upgrades itself, which is nice too. You know, if you do the appliance, everything is basically loaded. Everything is loaded. Well, the software is loaded on the appliance, so you don't need to buy the software. If you are, if you buy our software, you basically can build your own kind of appliance to do your backups to. So we do have different models that we can handle.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Well, I'm going to take back control here. If you have any final questions, let me know. But otherwise, I say thank you very much for coming. Really appreciate it. We know you have a lot of stuff to do in your day, so spending half an hour with us, we appreciate it. And John, thank you so much for being the data management rock star yourself and really giving us a great demo of Arcserve UDP. Your account exec's going to follow up with you if you have any questions, want to do a trial. Those are the guys to speak with. In the meantime, I'm Todd Obert from Productive, along with John Sanavacci from Arcserve. Wishing you a fantastic balance of your day and week, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, everybody.